Welcome to the deep dive. If you're here, it's because you want that shortcut to being truly well-informed, to really get a handle on the forces shaping our world. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a system that costs consumers billions every single year. And no, it's not malware or some data breach. We are diving into the psychological warfare waged by con artists. We're looking at exactly how they hack your brain for millions.
And the scale of this is, it's just hard to comprehend.
The numbers are staggering. Our sources are confirming that in 2021 alone, consumers lost something like $5.8 billion to fraud.
Billion, with a B.
Right. And that wasn't just a big number. That was a 70% plus increase over the year before. This isn't just theft. It's an epidemic rooted in psychology.
That's really the central mission of this deep dive. The financial ruin we see, that's just the end result of a psychological battle that the scammer has already won.
So they're not just hacking your bank accounts, they're hacking the person.
Exactly. They operate on this one core principle. Make your rational, objective brain, the part that weighs risks, your prefrontal cortex, make it essentially go dark.
The psychological blackout.
Total blackout. And while that rational part of your brain is sidelined, they hyperactivate your emotional limbic system. They force you into decisions based purely on impulse or fear or this sudden rush of excitement they've manufactured.
We're going to get into the specific tactics they use, right? From exploiting brain chemistry to just old-fashioned social engineering.
All of it. We're going to look at the specialized tactics they use to pull off this brain hack, the surprising data on who is most vulnerable, and the step-by-step playbook they use to force that one final panicked payment.
Okay, so let's start with the human cost, the demographics. Because the data really flies in the face of the idea that, only gullible or uninformed people fall for this.
It does. There's a great line from one of our sources that says, "It's not a matter of intelligence, it's that Ponzi schemers go for the gut and play to our emotions."
That's the key right there. It's about emotion, not IQ.
It's absolutely critical. And when we look at who's being victimized, we see that while fraud hits every age group, the financial exploitation of older adults is it's a really severe public health issue.
And they're being targeted for higher amounts.
Much higher.
Yeah.
The median loss for someone who is, say, 80 or older was $1,600. Compare that to someone in their 20s, where the median loss was around $450. It's a huge difference.
So why is that? Is it just that they have more assets to lose, or is there a genuine a shift in vulnerability as we age?
Well, it's a really complex mix, but the vulnerability is definitely compounded by two major risk factors.
Okay.
So on the cognitive side, you might have mild cognitive impairment or even the very early stages of dementia. This can lead to these subtle declines in financial judgment, and these changes can show up years before any official diagnosis.
So the person themselves might not even know their judgment is impaired.
Exactly. But just as powerful, if not more so, are the psychological factors: loneliness and isolation.
So the scammer isn't just looking for a bank account. They're looking for a gap in someone's emotional life.
Precisely. The research shows that older adults who say they feel lonely are just statistically much more likely to be victims of elder abuse, including financial scams. Loneliness leads to depression, which just deepens the risk. A scammer steps right into that void. They offer connection, validation, anything.
And you have a case that really illustrates this.
Yes, the case of Christine. She was 72, a really devastating example of how this works. She was active on social media, gets approached for what she thinks is a job opportunity, and that quickly turns into a high-stakes romance scam.
So a classic romance scam.
It started that way. Her beau supposedly worked in London, but then they combined it with a phony cryptocurrency investment scheme.
Wow, that's a lot of moving parts for one scam.
It is, but the complexity serves a purpose. It keeps the victim emotionally committed, the high drama, the promise of a huge payoff. It kept her completely hooked, both emotionally and financially. In the end, Christine lost $600,000.
Unbelievable.
Because the scam blended that intense emotional lure of a relationship with the financial urgency of an exclusive investment. It's a potent combination.
It really shows this is so much more than a cold call. It's a targeted campaign.
Okay, let's go deeper now into what's actually happening inside the brain. We're moving from the profile of the victim to the biological architecture of risk.
Right, and this is where we see the biological underpinning of that age-related vulnerability. Neuroimaging studies give us some pretty striking insights.
Like what?
Well, one of the biggest findings is what's called the positivity bias. As we age, our brain's information processing starts to prioritize emotionally pleasant features.
So your brain is literally wired to look on the bright side.
In a way, yes, which sounds great, but it has a dangerous side effect. It means the potential negative outcomes of a decision, the red flags, the warning signs, they're literally dampened. They're minimized in the victim's perception.
The emotional system is basically turning a blind eye to danger.
That's a great way to put it. But wait, if the brain is naturally wired for this positivity bias later in life, how does anyone detect a threat?
Yeah.
I mean, are these changes universal, or are there specific structural differences that put one person at higher risk?
That's the crucial distinction. The structural differences are what signal that increased risk. Studies have compared the brains of financially exploited older adults to those who successfully avoided scams.
And they found physical differences.
Significant ones. Exploited individuals showed cortical thinning, which is basically a reduction in volume in two really critical areas.
Okay.
The first is the right anterior insular cortex. Think of that as your brain's threat detector. It's the system that creates that gut feeling that, something is wrong here.
Okay, so that's the first one.
The second is the posterior superior temporal cortices. These are key for processing social information, specifically for figuring out if you can trust someone, what their intentions are.
So let me get this straight. The victims have a physically weaker ability to both register a threat and to judge the character of the person they're talking to.
You've got it. It's an internal biological vulnerability. And beyond the structure, the functionality is also impaired. We see reduced connectivity within what's called the salience network, which handles emotion-based decisions, and the default network, which handles social reasoning.
So the different parts of the brain that should be talking to each other aren't.
They're disjointed. The ability to connect that emotional warning sign, the I feel scared, with the rational analysis, this story doesn't add up, is significantly impaired. The scammer's job is really just to find and exploit that pre-existing disconnection.
Which brings us perfectly to the scammer's actual toolkit,
Yeah.
the social engineering. Once they find that vulnerability, they launch this sophisticated, often time-intensive campaign. This is not just random spam.
Not at all. It relies on exploiting basic human nature, our politeness, our beliefs. And our sources talk about this concept of moving the victim away from their wise mind, that balanced, rational thinking. The scammer has to push them into either pure emotional thought or a flawed, panicked, rational thought.
And they have two core strategies for this. Let's start with the rational hack. You call it imitation. How do they get past the logic of a skeptical person?
By impersonating authority and legitimacy. The most common tool, and it's brutally effective, is number spoofing.
Right, where the call looks like it's from your bank.
Exactly. The incoming call ID shows up as your bank's local branch or a government agency. It might even pop up in the same text thread you already have with them. That just immediately satisfies your brain's logic that the call must be real.
There was a great example of this with a young student.
Aaliyah, yeah. She was 19. The scammer spoofed her bank's number, and he knew she'd be skeptical, so he told her, hang up, go online, look up our number, and you'll see it's me calling.
Wow.
So she did. And of course, the number matched. Her initial skepticism just, poof, vanished.
That's genius. They actually use the person's own due diligence against them.
They do. And they couple this with mimicking official procedures. They'll give you a crime reference number, a police officer's badge ID, or ask security questions that just feel right. It's this flood of specific technical details that overwhelms your rational mind.
Okay, so that's how they handle the logic. What about the other side, the emotional brain? The second strategy, relationship building.
This is where they target biases like the liking and similarity bias. They build rapport. They find common ground, even if it's all completely fabricated.
So they do their homework.
Oh, absolutely. They study your social media, your conversation history, anything to find an emotional weak spot. Take the case of Kevin, age 59. He was recently divorced, emotionally fragile.
Right.
The scammer who contacted him claimed to have all the same interests. Obscure 80s indie music, 60s British movies, really specific things. This made Kevin feel this profound, immediate connection. It filled that emotional vacuum.
And when he started to have doubts?
That's the key. She didn't get angry. She got really upset and started crying. She used guilt to pull him right back in.
That emotional leverage is just incredible. It turns their own healthy skepticism into a personal failing. You feel guilty for doubting this new friend.
And that new relationship has to be protected from the outside world. That's where exclusion and authority bias comes in. The scammer has to isolate the victim.
Get them alone.
Right. Aaliyah's bank contact told her to make sure she was alone because the matter was very sensitive and private. That one statement cuts them off from getting a second opinion from a spouse or a friend.
And there was the investment scam example, too.
Remy, yeah. He was 30. He was told his investment opportunity was a special offer for only 10 people. It plays on that emotional lure of feeling chosen, of being special. By making the victim keep it a secret, the scammer guarantees there's no system to thinking, no slow, rational analysis to stop the process.
Okay, so the trust is built, the victim is isolated. Now the scammer moves to the final stage, the cognitive closer. This is about creating overwhelming pressure to bypass any shred of rational thought that's left.
It's all about weaponizing time. The first technique is the scarcity heuristic. They induce this sense of limited supply or extreme time urgency. This offer ends in 10 minutes, or I only have one left.
Like trying to buy a hot product, a gaming console or something.
Exactly. The case of Sarah, 56, trying to buy a PlayStation 5 for her son, the seller just handed her with pressure, saying, I've got 10 other people wanting this, quick. That urgency just stopped her from taking 5 minutes to check the seller's credentials.
And this gets amplified by another bias, right? Loss aversion.
Yes, the loss aversion bias. It's a fundamental part of human psychology. We feel the pain of a potential loss much more heavily than the pleasure of a potential gain. Scammers use this perfectly.
They create the threat of an imminent loss.
An imminent catastrophic loss. Unauthorized activity on your bank account. Huge tax penalties. Your money's about to be stolen. They make you believe that the only way to avoid losing everything is to act rashly and send money right now.
So fear actually causes this rapid risk-seeking behavior. It's totally counterintuitive.
It is. And the final piece of the puzzle is how they prepare for the system to fight back. When your bank sends that fraud alert, they call it coaching past warnings.
So they know the warning is coming.
They know it's coming, and they turn it into more proof of their authority. With Ruth, the impersonation scam victim, her scammer literally walked her through the payment screens. He told her, word for word, what the bank warning would say, and then told her exactly how to override that because, he claimed, he was in control of the situation.
So the external warning, the very thing designed to protect you, becomes useless.
It becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
The victim is already so psychologically committed to the scammer's story that the scammer is the only authority they trust.
So after all this, what does this all mean for the victims? We've talked about the billions lost, but there's that profound hidden toll. The sources are so clear that the emotional cost is often way worse than the financial one.
The fallout is just severe emotional trauma. Victims report feeling this intense shame, embarrassment, anger, just crushing self-blame. We see cases where people wait weeks to report because they're terrified of being judged.
Afraid of someone saying, how could you be so stupid?
That exact phrase, you stupid girl, that fear of judgment. The shame is the final wound the criminal inflicts, and the health consequences, they go way beyond just being distressed.
Yeah, the research on this is pretty sobering.
It really is. Studies on Ponzi scheme victims confirm it. The distress leads to measurably worse health, increased anxiety and depression, loss of sleep, even PTSD-like symptoms. One study found 56% of Madoff victims met the criteria for PTSD 10 months after it all came out.
56%. That's a staggering number. The trauma is real.
And it creates these long-term behavioral changes that can rob them of their future financial autonomy.
How so?
Well, for many, it causes a complete loss of confidence. We heard from victims who just lost interest in saving money at all, or who felt they had to hand over total control of their finances to a spouse because they just couldn't trust their own judgment anymore. The scam doesn't just steal money, it steals your power to make decisions.
Which brings us to the most essential takeaway here. Understanding the psychology is the armor. The fraud is always 100% the fault of the criminal, never the victim.
And to build your own armor, based on what we've learned, you have to cultivate strategic deliberation. That's the term. It just means slow down, verify everything through a separate channel, ask hard, skeptical questions.
And if you feel rushed,
that's a single biggest red flag. If you are being forced to act quickly, that is the scam. That urgency is the mechanism designed to push your rational mind offline. You have to intervene.
And you have to interrupt that feeling of being special.
Yes. Never trust promises of guaranteed excessive returns or these exclusive offers just for you. Always, always verify the credentials of any financial advisor with a regulator. And if you're asked to pay for an investment by wiring money to an individual person, run.
That focus on critical thinking leads us to the final provocative thought for you to take with you. Our sources highlight that overconfidence, that immediate reflexive thought, I'd never fall for that. That actually leads to a reduction in attention, the very thing scammers exploit. So the question is, What level of healthy skepticism are you willing to live with every single day to make sure your rational mind stays firmly in charge? That's the balance we all have to strike.
Thank you for joining us on the deep dive.